Welcome in, everyone. It is another edition of the Full-Time Roundup podcast. It is your host, Daniel Brackett, joined alongside me, co-host Harrison Clark. Harrison, it's been 2 weeks and 1 day since we've last recorded. How have you been since then?
I've been great. It's been cold around these parts, bud. So, just trying to stay warm. Would like it to, at least if it's going to be cold, would like a little bit of snow on the ground, but, we're not getting any of that. So now it's just kind of miserable outside. But other than that, the footy's been good. Hope you had a good New Year. That was great.
You as well. It was
Yeah.
fun. I had a chill. I actually got to golf on New Year's Eve, which is pretty crazy now looking back because it was 55 and sunny that day, and now it's cold as hell.
Yep.
As my friend who texted me because he found out I was playing soccer today outside, he goes, 33 degrees at 7 is nasty work, and I'd have to agree, Harrison.
Yeah.
I might be Reece James and pull a hamstring tonight just based off the temp.
I played pickleball the other day in sleet. So
why would you do that?
Just
married to the game,
just testing the body, making sure that we're still functioning.
The mental,
we're making sure we're still full go at this wise age of 25. So it is.
I got you. I'll be 25 here shortly in April, so I'll be joining you soon, my guy. You had a birthday since then, did you?
Hell no.
Okay, I couldn't remember. Sorry, that was Armel. Excuse me. That was Justin. No. But
he sucks.
Yeah, he does. There's been a lot of fun things that have kind of gone on. Sometimes you can look at the festive fixture and there's a lot going on, and sometimes there's not as much. I feel like it's been pretty slow considering that the Bundesliga and La Liga haven't been really in session. And Serie A took a break. I think they did the Coppa Italia, and then now they're kind of back this weekend. The good news is Bundesliga is back this weekend, so pretty pumped about that. We got a really nice fixture with Bayer Leverkusen and Dortmund on Friday that I'm looking forward to. But it's just been Premier League, and then we have the cup matches in England this weekend. So a fairly chill weekend of soccer. So not too much in terms of review to talk about. We're going to try something a little bit new today in terms of just talk about a couple things that we want to review. We thought about, some segment ideas. And so we're going to kind of try a new format and keep it tight today. We're not going to try to go for an hour this time. We're going to try maybe half that if possible. Me and Harrison, once you spin us up and let us go, sometimes we can get going. But there is a game that I wanted to talk about in particular, and then kind of dive into the two teams because they're two of the biggest teams in England and probably have some of the biggest fan bases as well. And that is the Liverpool-Manchester United Derby that we witnessed on Sunday. I got to watch with the United fan, which I wish I didn't have to. Ended up 2-2. First half was meh. It was okay. Ended 0-0, and then the second half sprung to life after some vigorous team talks, I would imagine, from Amorim and Arne Slot. Of course, to quickly give a review, Manchester United go up 1-0 with a Lisandro Martinez thunderstrike, and Cody Gakpo sends Matthias de Ligt to Amsterdam. Rumor has it he is sliding across the North Pole as we speak, but he levels us. Mo Salah scores a penalty converted off a high hand of, I think it was de Ligt. Mm-hmm. And then Ahmed Diallo levels it up at 2-2. Both teams had some good opportunities in the final minutes. Both fell to center backs, ironically. Virgil van Dijk on the 6-yard box with a header that went right to Onana, and then Harry Maguire, who knew he would be up there in attack, and just blows it over the bar. I was joking to my Manchester United friend, if Harry Maguire scored the game winner off an attack on Liverpool, you could probably see me diving into the ocean, never to return. But
cue the balcony.
Cue the balcony as well. But it was a really fun game. In a Liverpool lens, obviously frustrating because Manchester United have been just absolutely dreadful the last couple of weeks, but they certainly showed up. And obviously Trent gathered most of the headlines of this game with his shocking performance. I'm gonna have a different opinion here than most here. Number one, all people talk about is how bad of a defender he is. I think he is probably an average defender on a elite squad. I think that's a fair characterization, but what keeps him in the squad, obviously, is his elite attacking ability. I mean, he's the best passer I've seen in a very long time, and he just creates goals and is so part of that attack. Now, he had an off day, and I think every player, especially when you play a lot of games, are due for one. It just happens to be such an important game. And this shocking performance kind of made me think about how I've seen other Scousers in historical, sense, kind of they've had shocking performances. And the first one I could think of is when Steven Gerrard got benched. I think it was under the Brendan Rodgers era, and he throws him on at halftime, and Steven Gerrard immediately stamps. I believe I was trying to remember who it was. I think it was Juan Mata, but I could be wrong on that. And or Fellaini, I can't remember. It was a midfielder, and stamps the center mid 5 minutes into the second half. It gets a red card, straight red off. So I feel like for these games, these Liverpool born and bred players means more, and sometimes it can just be the occasion can almost overshine their performance, and so. I'm not going to give Trent too much stick today, even though his effort was definitely the most disappointing thing. It's okay to have an off day, but the performance was bad all around from him. I think he had 26 giveaways, and then he was at fault for one of the goals.
26?
I saw something about 26, just time possessions lost or something. He was trying all these passes that usually work off, and it just was not working against the Manchester United low block by any means. Just a terrible day at the office. And, he's a human, and this happens. But I think really what it shows is I think this contract hold thing is really affecting him. As you can see in his attitude. And I think that, I saw a report that, he has told his advisors to figure this out ASAP, because when you have a contract negotiation with your boyhood club hanging over your head, and then you also have a move to Madrid on your mind, that can make, these players have to be focused. And I don't think he's exactly focused right now. So I don't really expect him to play against Spurs, to be quite honest. But yeah, Liverpool's defense looked frail. And, Ibu and Verge can only make our back line look so good when you have weaknesses at the fullback position. Robertson at fault for one, didn't get goal side on Diallo's goal, and Trent with the effort. So that obviously sucks. Connor Bradley came in, and immediately we looked a little bit better defensively. So there's that. But Liverpool just lacked the cutting edge. In terms of the final third, that final pass just wasn't there. But I also want to applaud it, United's back line and their low block that they would set up when Liverpool were having a lot of possession. They were very hard to break down, and they played like a team. And they got praise for playing like a team. It's like, guys, like this should happen every single week. Are we really going to praise a team for playing together? But that's kind of some of my thoughts in terms of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we got to give credit where credit's due for United. I mean, pulling out any sort of result in Anfield is impressive. Big props, I think. I think Harry Maguire actually has been one of the few guys under Amarim who's been really solid.
Contract on the way.
That's what I'm saying. And I think he's earned that. He's continually for the past few years just been the subject of just United fans bickering and all this bullshit coming at Harry Maguire, and I don't think all of it is necessary. I think he's actually been pretty solid, and he's been good whenever he's played for England as well. So he's the subject of a lot of unnecessary criticism, I think. So I think it's deserved for him, even though, man, what an opportunity he had to fucking win the game at the end there.
Heart and mouth
Just
moment. My heart
yeah,
rate
you
was
just see.
jacked.
I mean, oh Nana drops to his knees, and I'm like, all right, bro. But yeah, I mean Liverpool like still in a good spot. Were you 7 points clear right now?
Yeah,
I think yes, or seven. Yeah, seven sounds
6 or
right. But
7.
still in a very good spot. Probably a game you'd expect them to win with how United's been playing, but also at the same time, United went to City and pulled out a result. United now goes to Anfield and pulls out a result. They have played okay against the top teams, which is so weird because then they'll come back to Old Trafford and play like absolute dog shit. So I don't know. I think it's just a culture thing with United, the inability to get up for every single game. And it's something they'll continue to have to work on going into the off season, and maybe into the transfer window. But I don't know. They've kind of said that they don't really plan on doing much of the transfer window, so I don't exactly know what the hell's going on. But you guys are still in a pretty good spot. You guys, I mean, it's a little blip. Trent had a tough moment. Um, other than that, I mean, a really fun second half.
Well, the good news is Liverpool get to kind of beat out their frustration on Spurs tomorrow, which I think could get ugly in the cup. And then Manchester United will be playing Arsenal in the FA Cup third round. And this is going to be Arsenal off a loss to Newcastle. They are currently in the 90th minute losing the EFL Cup semifinal. So not a great position for United in terms of where you want Arsenal to be at in a headspace wise. But I'd like to see United kind of take this win or this draw, good result for them and build on that. I thought Bruno Fernandes was probably the best player on the pitch today. Him and Gravenberch stood out to me, just two really quality opponents. I was also very impressed with Ugart. I thought that was probably his best game in a United shirt. So I was fairly impressed with the midfield, which I feel like no one really says about United because their midfield is usually garbage.
Yeah.
Manu obviously didn't have the best game, but he's a young player in a big game. So I was kind of expecting that. And I think, Curtis Jones and Manu kind of canceled each other out. And then it was the Gravenberch McAllister versus Bruno and Ugart, which I really enjoyed watching that battle that entire game. United's backline looked pretty good too. Mazraoui completely shut out Luis Diaz. Dalot got booked early against Salah, and I was thinking that could be a lot of trouble, but he kind of kept Salah pretty under wraps the entire game. And then Giallo is just such a fantastic player. Garnacho looked fairly lively when he came on and created a couple good chances, including the assist to Giallo. Højlund really struggled, I guess, in terms of, you're playing against two beasts of center backs, and it just seemed like Ibu and Verge were having their way. But you could see flashes of Højlund getting free and making some really intelligent runs. He just is struggling to put the ball in the back of the net. At the end of the day, 13th in the Premier League and your star striker has 2 goals in the Premier League. That's just not going to cut it. And then Xerxes has the same amount, and he looked fairly useless coming on as well. So a lot of holes to fill if you're a United fan. And I kind of wanted to reassess their squad here and see, all right, with this United squad, what can Amorim do? I guess not in the short term because he is going to, apparently they're going to not really be buyers in the transfer window. But what can they do in the summer to revamp the squad? There are so many holes in this team, in my opinion. So I wanted to kind of address the state of the United squad and see, what we can kind of scrum up here to see what would be, a good solution here. A couple players, and so Amorim, of course, plays I guess you could call it a 5-2-2-1 or a 5-2-3. I guess it's kind of a weird formation. I feel like the center backs, Lissandro, Maguire, De Ligt, and Liniero, that's a pretty good center back core.
Yeah.
It's doable.
It's doable. Like you'd think with those names that they'd not concede as much, I would guess, but yeah, like on paper, that should get the job done.
And Lindelof will be walking this year, but on the right wing back, Mazraoui looked pretty good.
Solid.
I thought Delo's, he's hot and cold, but he's a decent enough player he's 25 to give, more. Malacia, I'm not sure about him long term, but it seems
still
like
young.
Still very young. So they need at least an outside back or a wing back. You can play Diallo or Garnacho in that position as well.
I think they need to make a decision on Luke Shaw because, is the guy going to play again? He's basically just holding a roster spot right now. Typically, obviously, if he was healthy, I think you would have Luke Shaw in that position, and instead you have Diallo playing on his off wing. But I guess for the time being, he gets the job done. Like you mentioned, Diallo's been hot and cold this year. I know last year he was very solid. I think they need to make a decision on what they're going to do with Luke Shaw. I think best case scenario, you probably sell him for something because I don't think you're getting much out of him anymore, considering he's injured all the time. He's basically just a left back version of Reece James. I don't know. It's time being, Dallas okay there, but I think they need to figure out, probably get another left back in there.
He makes a pretty penny too, so you probably want to offload him if he can't stay healthy, which the sample size points to him not staying healthy, unfortunately, which is a shame as a player. In terms of the midfield, I think that's where the most investment needs to be had. I think Eriksen and Casemiro need to be offloaded. I think selling McTominay this summer was probably one of the worst decisions they've made in a long time because he's obviously flourishing in Naples. But you have Mainu and you have Ugarte, who seem like a decent enough core, but you probably need to sign 2 more midfielders, holding midfielders at least, to kind of steady the ship there in terms of rotation. Do you have any players in mind?
In terms of the midfield?
Yeah.
Nobody right off the bat. It kind of just feels like they just got to get through this season and then make the decision then. Eriksen's not doing much for you anymore. Casemiro's dog shit. Mainu's the only guy I really believe in. And even then, even though he just signed an extension last year, there's still talks that maybe he could be out the door, which would make zero sense to me. But then again, I did see that Chelsea would be the front runners for him, so maybe he should go.
You guys need another midfielder.
Sure do. But I think this is something that they figure out for the rest of the year. I don't have anybody specifically. Do you have somebody specifically in mind who could even help them?
Yeah, I do actually. I think that Ederson from Atalanta would be.
Okay.
They need low key signings. They don't need a star. They need low key signings. They need Liverpool signings. They need
the more signings that they make that are bigger profile, they continue to not work there.
Exactly.
So maybe it is just signing a guy for 15 mil, 20 mil, just plugging him in there.
Anything under 50 mil, I feel like would be so. Højlund from Sporting worked under Amorim. He's a Danish kid who's 25, 26. I think he's a solid defensive midfielder. Ederson from Atalanta, I think, is a really midfield destroyer who would be good. Carlos Baleba would be that 80 to 100 mil signing. I don't see him signing for United, but that would be a big profile that you could look for. You could get Douglas Luiz, who's obviously not enjoying his time in Juventus.
What a weird move that was.
Yeah, he might come back to City, I've heard, in January, but that's another potential guy that you could look at. Adam Morton for Palace, that would command probably 40 million roughly. So that's a few midfielders you could get. You could look at the Championship. Joe Bellingham is not really a defensive midfielder, but he's an 8 that you could look at as a project. If you wanted to look at Joe Bellingham, just have another sick Bellingham in the Premier League. I'd like to see that personally. So those are a couple guys that I kind of just off the top of my head of player profiles and defensive mid that I've looked at for Liverpool that I would like.
Where are you at with Mason Mount?
Oh, man, you spent 75 mil on him. You gotta give him one more season to stay healthy. I think that Amorim maybe in summer can kind of turn that around. So you'd have him and Bruno. in as like the attacking net options, which is a pretty two good, decent ones to have. And then at the winger position, I guess you're stuck with Antony at least for another season. But you have Diallo, you have Garnacho. Obviously, the selling of Alenga obviously is a dagger as well, as he's just balling out at Forest. But you'd probably have to sign a winger too. So at least
and try to get Rashford alone somewhere.
You'll probably be able to offload Rashford for 50 mil somewhere, maybe a little bit less. So I mean, he has zero value at this point in terms of United. There's no leverage there, is what I'm saying, basically. So you can't command a big fee, but you'll probably want to get him out. Obviously, Emerim clearly does not see him in his plan. So you could look at. I just keep pointing back to who Amorim has kind of coached in previously, but there's plenty of wingers on the market that you could look for that are maybe lower profile that could do the job. And then you obviously have to reevaluate the 9 position. You probably keep Højlund, you probably loan Xerxes out, and you sign a backup striker. Who you decide to go with, that is an excellent $1 million question. I don't think you're going to be able to pull Gyökeres at this point, but we'll have to see. So lots of.
I got a name.
Shoot.
They should go for Christopher Nkunku.
Christopher Nkunku.
Not getting too much burn at Chelsea. Sure, he's like the number 9 for the B team, but that's not what he signed up for when he joined Chelsea. So, and I'm very confident that Chelsea will make him available, along with a couple of other guys who they kind of don't really mess with as much. Hey, maybe even Ben Chilwell if they need a left back option. But I think Nkunku will be made available by Chelsea, and if United choose to go that route, I don't hate that. I think that he deserves more game time. He's obviously a heck of a player. A couple of seasons ago at Leipzig, he was arguably the best striker in the Bundesliga. So, yeah, I think that could be an option.
Marmouche?
I mean, if they're selling, I mean, I don't see Frankfurt. Frankfurt probably should cash in on him with this kind of season that he's having. So
he's going to Prem, I think, for sure. So
okay, well, yeah, whoever needs a striker in the Prem. I mean, he doesn't feel as big. His profile doesn't feel big enough necessarily for me for an Arsenal signing. Like, I don't think Arsenal would go after him, but I could definitely see United going after him. So yeah, that could be an option as well.
And Buemo, Brentford.
They're going to play him at the 9. I mean,
or like a right winger. That'd be a fun one.
Yeah, he's almost like he feels like a center / right. Like he just
plays behind the striker. Like Bruno and Diallo or Garnacho kind of play behind the striker. I feel like that would be like a pretty interesting, intriguing.
Yeah, he's like a withdrawn striker.
Yeah, so I think that would be. I mean,
they could use his goal production.
Yeah, so those were a couple of names that I just had off the top of my head, but I definitely enjoyed that discourse. Obviously, United are going to have to splash some cash in the summer, if not in January. But again, but I do think they should go with lower profile and spend less money and build and get more quantity of players than go for 1 or 2, big stars. Obviously, as most people will say. Now, kind of, the January transfer window has opened, and we haven't seen many transfers in. Liverpool at the top. I don't think we're going to be really going shopping. Maybe we'll sneakily get a left back. I really hope so. With Kirkesh is kind of what I want, or Anthony. But looking at the top 4 of the Premier League, or at least just like in general the table, do you see any teams that are going to be buyers within the top 4 that you could see that could make waves in terms of making this Premier League race more interesting? Just to clarify, Liverpool are 6 points clear. So like Arsenal, for example, do you think they'll go shopping?
I mean, we've been talking about it for a while. Like, I still think they need a striker.
I think they need a winger, arguably just as bad.
They probably do too, considering Saka's injury. They probably do need another winger. And my man Raheem Sterling's not getting any burn whatsoever. So if they believe that much in Trossard and Martinelli to get the job done, then So be it. I think they need at least another attacking option. Because Kai Havertz doesn't do it for me either. And their only goal is really that they score off set pieces, and their center backs are close to their top goal scorers on their team. So, yeah, I could see them if they make a move for a 9, one that'll fit into Arteta's system. I think that would do them wonders for the second half of the season. And also just I don't think they believe in Gabriel Jesus necessarily either. Other teams, yeah, I mean, Newcastle's flying right now. Do they necessarily need to make a move?
5 in a row, 5 wins in a row.
I feel like if they were going to make a move, they'd probably go for another center back or some sort of defender.
Yeah,
They are like, I mean, they're usually involved in these kind of high flying games. So maybe shoring up the back end, even though Fabian Schär is very good. I like Lewis Hall a lot at left back, obviously, former Chelsea guy.
Yeah.
Other
their midfield's
teams,
good, so like, and their attack is solid. So like Harvey Barnes, the fact that Jacob Murphy's starting over Harvey Barnes is crazy to me. But to be fair to Jacob Murphy, he's balling, so it's like it's hard. But I think other than center back is like the biggest position of need for Newcastle. I also don't see Forest really making any signings. The one thing I will say about Forest, because obviously they've just been on a generational run, being third at level with Arsenal at 40 points, which is ridiculous, and 4 points clear of Chelsea, which is crazy to even say that. Now, if they keep on doing what they're doing, they probably need to sign a couple guys just to prepare for that depth of what Champions League or Europa League is going to command. So I wouldn't mind them making a few signings in terms of just to make sure these players are going to hit the ground running next year in Europe if that their form continues. I don't see them. I mean, with European football, it goes all the way to 7th, I believe. And so they're 7 points clear of Bournemouth in 7th. So, I mean, that's not that many points enough where, crazier things have happened in terms of they could, start to lose a couple games. They did have a nice win against Wolves. Wolves dominated the game, and they just were more clinical with Chris Wood at the top. I know they're looking at a striker, but they could shore up a little bit here and there, specifically in the midfield. But then you think about Danilo not even playing a minute of football. The defense looks solid. Like, I don't really see Forest being any buyers at this point.
No, I think with what they have going on right now, they should just ride this momentum with this team. Just kind of feels special with the group that they have.
It does.
You think City make it? I mean, City
big time. That's the biggest buyers, in my opinion, in the Premier League this window.
They got to go for a midfielder.
Got to, have to. I think Douglas Luiz is that profile, at least on a loan with obligation to buy.
He would add some good elements to that midfield, like physicality, strong defensively, which they need because they just, for some reason, all of a sudden let in goals like crazy. I think they need a strong kind of six in there, at least while Rodgers out.
Absolutely. So Douglas Luiz makes sense. I think 1 or 2 midfielders, and then I think you should probably go and sign a winger. Jack Grealish is not fitting the bill. Foden's been terrible. Savinho starting to finally hit the ground a little bit. It took 6 months, but I think he's starting to kind of show some potential. Obviously, the fact that Rodri, and then you had the who's the kid that was playing so well as an academy kid early on that he broke
Oscar Bob.
Oscar Bob, like someone like him who's just like, I don't know who you could go get right now who's cheap, but I feel like they could make a winger signing as well to complement and give service to Haaland, as KDB and Savinho can only do so much on one side. So I could see them being big buyers. Any other positions of need in terms, like maybe right back for them or center back potentially?
Maybe. I mean, I like Rico Lewis when he kind of goes into that inverted position, but I also think Walker is slowing a little bit. So if they want to shore it up a little bit, maybe try to find kind of a low-key signing who can do the job for the meantime at right back if need be. I don't hate that. They have so many injuries at center back. It's like, I feel like Diaz is always out. Stones is out all the time too. It's like, I feel like Akanji is usually just like the guy who's always there. Or even Ake, who's also has dealt with injuries. So, and Ederson's been hurt. Like they just had a lot of shit going on. But it's nice that they have De Bruyne back because obviously going forward, that changes a shit ton for them. Like De Bruyne going forward, him with the link up play with Haaland, and we've seen that in the last 2 games with them. Starting to get back to where we know City are, and just De Bruyne and Haaland dominating the middle. So if they can shore up those positions, specifically the 6, if they can get a 6 in there, then they can definitely make a run the second half, and I would not be shocked if they did.
I know Spurs just brought in a goalkeeper because obviously their goalkeeper situation is not ideal, but do you think Spurs kind of look for anything? They're a pretty cheap club in terms of investments, and they did spend some money with Solanke in the summer. Do you see any investment within Spurs?
I just don't like. I think it's the system that's the problem now. Like
I feel like that's so harsh saying, when you consider,
bro. I mean, look
employed.
At their last 10. Every game is the exact same. Flying forward, game's wide open. I mean, they literally. You saw last week with Newcastle, classic Spurs. Solanke 1-0. 2 minutes later, 1-1. And it's just like that every single time that Spurs play. They'll get off to a good start, and then immediately it's in the back of their net. And I just think they need to change up maybe the messaging in some sense of like, hey, once we get up, let's like shut it down a little, just a little bit. But instead they play the exact same way, and it kills them.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
some pragmatism from Ange would be well appreciated, I think, is what you're saying, and I completely agree.
Like I don't necessarily think Ange is a bad coach, but I think maybe his messaging needs to change a little bit to where they at least get a little bit more defensive after they start.
Starting Jed Spence and Archie Gray in the middle of the park in terms of center backs, it's just not the pairing you want. But I do think in terms of, United and Spurs are kind of in the same spot to me. Like, I think this would obviously the season is not what you hope for, but if you lean on this young talent, in particular, Lucas Bergvall and Archie Gray for Spurs, and then, Kobe Manu, Ugarte, Giallo, Garnacho, Højlund. Like, if you lean the Euro, like if you lean on the young talent and just accept that you're going to just not be where you want to be in the Premier League this year, I think that could, really help them use as a building block for challenging more next year. But
they also just haven't got enough from Bissouma. I think. I thought Bissouma was going to be. I thought that was such a good signing. I thought it was such a good signing from Brighton, and he has just not. He's not been that for Spurs at all.
And then Bentancur is just Bentancur. Papa Sarr has been decent, but yeah, that midfield needs to be shorn up at some point. Needs some more investments. If probably at the end of the season, I think they have enough people now, but. Yeah, I think you should probably reassess that midfield because their attack is solid with Kulusevski, Brendan Johnson, Solanke's son, all those guys. I mean, Tino Werner is.
You can get him off the books if you want to.
Yeah, but I think that's a pretty good discourse there in terms of that. Do we want to do top 7 predictions? How do you see it unfolding? You go first.
I think your boys are going to win the league. Congratulations. Maybe I jinxed it. I think right now the top 2 are set in my mind. I think Arsenal will finish second. Do I think that Forest will finish top 4? There's still 18 games to go. I'm going to say Chelsea 3, Forest 4, City 5.
Okay, how about 6 and 7?
Actually, wait. Hold on. Sorry. Chelsea 3, Forest 4, Newcastle 5, City 6.
And who's at 7? Does Aston Villa, Bournemouth, Fulham, Brighton, Brentford?
I'll ride Bournemouth. I like Areola a lot.
Okay, I'm going to say Liverpool first, Arsenal second, Chelsea third, City fourth, Newcastle fifth, Forest sixth, Bournemouth seventh. So a little shake-up, but I think the top 7 stay the top 7. I just think Aston Villa and Fulham are going to be right pushing for that 7-6 spot if anyone really slacks and they're, a bull case in terms of buy if you're sleeping on one of those teams. I can't see. I think City are really going to buy in the summer or in the January window, and they're going to do the classic January where they just go and they put a bunch of games together at this point, and maybe they aren't able to sneak up into fourth, but I think they'll at least be fifth or fourth. I'm not going to bet against Guardiola here, and I think they should be able to secure Champions League football. Last thing I wanted to kind of talk about today, so we're going to do Coppa Italia review, or the Super Coppa, whatever the Saudi, Coppa Italia that we just watched.
So weird.
It's weird. It's kind of confusing to me, honestly. But let me get the exact name for it. The Italian Super Cup. So, obviously, right before AC Milan move on from Paulo Fonseca, we've kind of guessed that he would be sacked at some point. Finally, it happened. We can argue if that was meant to be or not. I'm going to say that was a good thing based off the hire. They signed Sergio Coceicao from Porto, who I love.
Good hire.
I love that. And, they go and yes, did they win against Juventus pretty lackadaisically? For sure. I mean, it took one of the most hilarious own goals from Gatti. But, Pulisic and Musa are the guys that get them to the final. And then Pulisic basically,
put them on his back.
He wins the game basically for them with the second goal. And then the beautiful setup for Leao to square it across for a tap in for Tammy Abraham. So that Milan Juventus game, I think, really got them confidence as Inter beat Atalanta pretty handily, I'd say. It got kind of sketchy at the end of the game. But when you were looking at this matchup from Inter versus AC Milan, I mean, obviously, I'm sure the betting odds were highly in Inter's favor. They do score first, and Milan looked very dead. And then Theo Hernandez scores a beautiful low free kick. They get some black magic in terms of just like somehow Magnan is able to save one off the line. Inter miss a couple really big opportunities in the second half, and then Milan just show no quit. Pulisic levels them, and then in the last minutes of the game, Milan completely collapse, and AC Milan are able to get the win. I think that's this is a trophy that you can debate about its validity, but I think this is going to really help AC Milan, that is, in the table. They currently sit 8th place. They are from Lazio, who are in 4th. They are 8 points back. I think they could make up some ground as they're behind Bologna, Fiorentina, Juventus, and Lazio. I think that their story is not over. I don't know if UCL is attainable, but I do think that they can still push for Europa or Europa Conference League. And I'm really excited to see what Sergio Coceicao does. Also, there was a stat about how many managers Pulisic's played under in his young career, and it was I think it was double digits at this point. Pretty remarkable for a player. I mean, that just shows his character and, that he's willing to adapt. And there's many coaches that value him as a player, and he's been able to flourish since he, moved and got that big move to Italy. So, Pulisic, Musa, and then I think the focal point, I mean, you have a core of Leao, Pulisic, and haven't really mentioned this guy, but he's been the best player, arguably right up there with Pulisic, Tijani Reinders. This guy is class. He's class. He's so good. And he signed an extension, or is about to ink an extension with AC Milan, which is shocking. I think they're doing that so some club doesn't come poaching him. I don't see him at Milan for that much longer based off his profile and, the love of Dutch players around Europe. So I could see him being plucked and could be put easily into a Barcelona team or a very top Premier League team. But I think Sergio Coceicao has a very pragmatic approach. AC Milan's defense has been the biggest issue they've had this year. It hasn't been scoring goals. It's been the defense, and I think he's going to shore that up. And I think Milan could be a nice bull case in terms of kind of moving up the Serie A table in terms of the second half of the year. And I think Calcio, that Super Cup was so much fun. And we do have another Super Cup coming up. We have this weekend, we have the Spain Super Cup. Barcelona versus Athletic Bilbao is the first leg, and then Real Madrid versus Mallorca. So I'm imagining Real Madrid beat Mallorca, and it'll be a Barcelona El Clasico or Athletic Bilbao final. So I think that would be a really fun game. England has cup games and Bundesliga's back, so definitely look out for that. But I think we could see a really fun final there. I think that's on Sunday or Monday of next week. Do you have any predictions on who's going to hoist that trophy?
Well, I expect a Clasico.
You expect a Clasico?
That's my full expectation.
I think Bilbao is going to be tough.
I mean, they will be. And this is they're always tough, regardless if they play in the top 4 of Spain. It's always a tough game. But I think Barcelona could use a trophy right now.
They could.
With how their season started and how it's been going recently, I think a trophy would inject a lot of life back into them. So yeah, I think they could definitely use one. I mean, Madrid are playing pretty good right now. They kind of had a fraudulent win this past weekend, but
the most fraudulent win I've ever seen. But
yeah, but I think that a Barca Madrid final is what I predict, and I'll say Barcelona takes it because I think that it just means a little more to them right now as Madrid, find their way back to the top of La Liga. I think Barcelona need it, honestly, to get them back into life.
I don't think.
Also want to say, really just happy in general for my former Chelsea boys, Christian Pulisic and Tammy Abraham, to get the job done in Saudi Arabia. To be honest, never really realized that Tammy Abraham was on AC Milan. Have not heard a word.
Injured for a while.
I know. Yeah, he's been injured. But I mean, he went off to Roma, and then he was. So, I mean, happy for Tammy to get back involved and get a trophy for the fellas. I said before the year I thought AC Milan were going to be good. It's been really disappointing. And also Alvaro Morata, ghost.
Yeah,
my man just has not been. He hasn't done a thing, and I thought he was going to be a huge signing for them before the year, especially coming off his Euros. But yeah, happy for the Chelsea boys.
I think with Sergio Coceicao, he might get back to his best, and you have the two-head snake of Tammy or Alvaro Morata riding the best form, and Leao and Pulisic are a shoe-in with Rangers behind, so you at least have shored up that attack, and then Fofana has been a pretty good signing for them. I think the defense is the biggest part of Milan that needs to be fixed, and I think that's going to be handled.
Can you imagine Rangers in the midfield with a Ryan Gravenberch, with the Dutch connection with Slot at the helm?
It'd have to incorporate. They'd have to sit in front of McAllister as well. So
Correct.
You'd be duking out between Curtis Jones, Szoboszlai, and Reinders. I think Reinders beats both of those players out. Not a position of need because we also have Harvey Elliott. But
I'm well aware. I just had the thought in my mind.
But that does keep me up at night sometimes. I'm not gonna lie. I think he could be a really good player at Arsenal, though. I think he could be fantastic at United. Or scarily, he could be the player to replace De Bruyne if we're thinking just the Premier League. I'd like to see him maybe in a Madrid or Barcelona kit as well. But yeah, going back to the Spain Super Cup, I think that the winner will be between whoever wins the game between Barcelona and Athletic Bilbao. I think that this Madrid team is overrated. They played a lot of games, and I just don't see their form as enough to get them through. So in terms of the final. So I'm going to put my eggs in that basket. I think that Barcelona will be able to win. Not that confident in that, but I do think the winner of that tie will end up being victorious over in the Super Cup. But we didn't do our promise of finishing in 30 minutes, but we did get in 45, so I'm pretty proud of that. Harrison, always thank you for hopping on. It was fun to talk some footy. We have a couple of good segment ideas coming up in the future here. And so, we're going to most likely keep that bi-weekly episode, but you could see a weekly episode slide in there every once in a while in terms of if we have a really fun segment idea we want to chat about. Could just be a much shorter episode. So thank you again for listening. And we'll talk to you guys soon.